The phrase "hit the ground running" applies especially to the world of professional wrestling, where if the goal is to produce exciting 3-hour events, then it's important to start off strong. The opening match is an art unto itself, the appetizer for the hearty meal ahead. Generally, we don't want to give away too much in the beginning, but you also don't want to underwhelm to the point where those in the crowd contemplate beating the traffic early. There are good ways to hit hard out of the gate, whether it's a scintillating formula tag match or some spirited cruiserweight cluster F. Sometimes you'll even get an absolute work of art, be it Brian Pillman versus Jushin Liger or Brett and Owens' battle for supremacy. This video, however, will not be deep diving into that kind of brilliance. Instead, we're going to be discussing the surreal and the questionable, some of the more unusual ways that promoters have opted to kick off their most important cards. I'm Tom Campbell from Cultaholic.com, and here are the 10 strangest wrestling pay-per-view opening matches. Join us. Number 10, any WWE namesake gimmick match. We're just going to create one catch-all entry to discuss this very legitimate gripe with modern WWE shows. The problem with themed pay-per-views is that WWE oftentimes just shoehorns middling, short-term rivalries into ambitious gimmick matches just because it's a certain time of year. The New Day has issues with some tag team and it's December? Stick 'em in a ladder match. The leaves are turning color and Undertaker wants to kill CM Punk? Better make it a Hell in a Cell. Cell matches, ladder matches, anything that fits inside the widened parameters of extreme rules. Overuse of these kind of modifiers water down the idea that individuals with a prolonged grudge require the nuclear option to settle the score. By creating themed events, WWE has gimmicks that need rivalries and not the other way round. It's especially irritating when these apparent holy wars are kicking off the pay-per-view. When it's still light outside the arena and the bum 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 of the Hell in a Cell lowering is playing, it's possible that this show may be more overbooked than a year's worth of airline flights. And hey, after you've watched a dozen car wreck ladder spots in the opener, it's really hard to get excited for the Shining Stars versus the B Team immediately after. Number 9, the Barbed Wire Massacre. WWE may have the market cornered on a number of things. Overbooking the opener clearly isn't one of them. In this case, TNA opened their 2005 Turning Point pay-per-view with a barbed wire match between notable masochists Sabu and Abyss. Ideally, such a potentially grim melee would be saved for the finale, but as the title of this video suggests, they kicked off the event by having two maniacs rip at each other with the provided barbs. From a logistical standpoint, a barbed wire match has to go on either first or last, since taking down the ropes, putting up the barbed wire strands requires a bit of setup time. You can't really put it on in the middle where there's setup and then the match and then the takedown time. It kind of kills the flow of the show. Given two bookends to choose from, however, TNA chose to open with the violentest match possible, as opposed to sending everyone home following an unstoppable spectacle. Like, come on, Jarrett, you could have gone on earlier. Number 8, the Catch as Catch Can match. To say that WCW Sold Out 2000 didn't go as planned is like saying that George Clooney got a little wet in the perfect storm. Injuries to world champion Bret Hart and US title holder Jeff Jarrett prompted last-minute changes to the card. Factor in backstage unease with the resignation of Vince Russo, WCW was not in a good place. This show was emblematic of a once strong promotion in freefall, and its opener a microcosm of the disorganization. On the amended card, Billy Kidman had to wrestle 3 matches against members of the Revolution, each bearing a stipulation. First up, he was to face Dean Malenko in the aforementioned Catch as Catch Can rules match, rooted in the science of wrestling itself. Sounds good, given the participants, but unfortunately it ended around the 2-minute mark. That's because Malenko forgot the rules of the match, which stated that if an opponent's feet touch the floor, he's disqualified. When he rolled outside early on to gather his bearings, he unknowingly forfeited away one of the few matches on the show that had potential to be good. Number 7, the Little Italy Street Fight. If you've ever followed WWE live events on their loop, like some belt-carrying groupie, you may have come across a spate of shows, each with their own town-specific street fights. Like, how is an Oklahoma City street fight any different than a Kansas City street fight? Maybe a tornado whips through the Kansas one and sends the wrestlers to Oz. I don't know. It's one of those charming absurdities that make wrestling wrestling. In their 2007 Against All Odds pay-per-view, Team 3D, aka aka the Dudley Boys, with one of Jerry McDivitt's eyes on them, kicked off the event battling the older version of LAX in this so-called Little Italy street fight. The ring was filled with a small dining table with checkered tablecloths, giving it a kind of sidewalk cafe pizzeria type feel. So, okay. But there were also 2 strippers in cages in the vicinity, which doesn't sound like any Italian restaurant I've ever heard of. Maybe this is why Soul Train Jones extols the virtues of Olive Garden so much. Anywho, this was just your typical hardcore brawl, albeit with pizza cutters and tablecloths. Oh, and cage dancers. We cannot forget the cage dancers. Number 6, Brock Lesnar versus Cain Velasquez. Granted, on a list of most bothersome things about Crown Jewel 2019, this ranks maybe 7th or 8th on the docket overall. For a month, WWE had built to this allegedly anticipated rematch from a UFC card 9 years in the past, and was so important that 6 months along, champion Kofi Kingston was sacrificed in one swipe to make it happen. Don't get me started. Given how everything leading up to the match seemed to irritate many fans, the payoff had better be worth it. Well, hopefully 2 minutes of bastardized MMA was enough to satiate your maw. Try as Velasquez could, knee injury and all, he and Lesnar's brief time attempting a worked match just didn't gel. And even when Velasquez suddenly tapped in the Kimura lock, it still felt about 90 seconds too long. It's still not entirely clear why this also important high-stakes encounter kicked off the show, unless Brock just wanted to go home at the earliest opportunity. Knowing what we learned in the days ahead, smart Brock. Smart. Number 5, the Great American Bash Scaffold Match. Scaffold matches are rarely seen in this day and age, and probably for good reason. They're supposed to end with somebody plummeting to their doom from a great height. There are obvious hazards at hand, as young Jim Cornette learned at the 1986 Starrcade, when Big Bubba Rogers failed to catch him on his fall, and Corny blew out both his knees. In any event, the point of a scaffold match is to get fans excited about the idea of a certain hated heel doing the Wile E. Coyote descent into oblivion. In 1991, at the ill-fated Great American Bash, Steve Austin and Terry Taylor seemed to be those kinds of heels due for the freefall when they were matched up with Bobby Eaton and PN News to kick off the night. After 6 minutes of uneasy shambling across the elevated platform, the match suddenly ended when Eaton procured a flag from the heel side of the scaffold and returned it to his starting point. That's right, the match was capture the flag rules instead of throw the other guys off rules. The fans weren't really made aware of this, and even the participants seemed a little bit confused when the bell suddenly rang. Number 4, the Chamber of Horrors. It's a 1991 WCW double feature, and it's apropos given the state of the company during its final months of Jim Herd's reign of befuddlement. 3 months following the Bash, WCW ran its 3rd annual Halloween Havoc pay-per-view, and really went out of their way to incorporate the holiday theme into the event. The opening match pitted Sting, El Gigante, and the Steiner Brothers against Vader, Diamond Stud, Cactus Jack, and Abdullah the Butcher in the first ever, and only ever, Chamber of Horrors. The 8 men fought inside a ringside encompassing steel cage filled with weapons and caskets, which themselves contained masked nobodies bearing weapons of their own. Midway through the match, an electric chair lowered from the ceiling. Object was to strap one opponent in and then force him to ride the lightning. It should be noted that the match took place in Tennessee, where pile drivers were once illegal, but arbitrary capital punishments? As Mills Lane would say, I'll allow it. Anyway, Abdullah ate the voltage, but soon came back to life, helping Cactus beat up a team of zombie medics and, yeah. Number 3, the Steel Asylum cage match. Not a pay-per-view, but an important night regardless. 10 full years have passed since TNA Impact opposed Monday Night Raw on the first week of 2010, with the challenger strong in spots but muddled in others. For the opening match, TNA put together 8 X-Division standouts, including Alex Shelley, Homicide, Jay Lethal, and the future Xavier Woods, positioning them as an eye-catching car crash. But because it's TNA, it just couldn't be as simple as letting them astound with their work. No, this was a Steel Asylum cage match, an affront to the visibility of all. The blood-red bars were such an eyesore that you'd wonder who would be stupid enough to paint a steel cage red. Oh yeah, right, that did happen again, didn't it? To win, a wrestler had to climb the inside of the dome and escape through a manhole-like opening at the cage's apex. Homicide was apparently supposed to win, but struggled for over a full minute with the attempted climb out, resulting in an audible being called to just rule the match a no contest. Jeff Hardy's return to the company in the aftermath somewhat distracted from what unnecessary disaster the match ended up being. Number 2, Daniel Bryan versus Sheamus. In the 8 years since the 18-second debacle that kicked off WrestleMania 28, reactions remain mixed, to say the least. For many, having Sheamus end Bryan's world title reign with one solitary maneuver was as boneheaded as anything WWE has ever done. Others note the unintended consequence of how it ultimately benefited Bryan, since outraged fans only rallied more strongly behind him. This is a fair point, except they forget that the match turned many fans against Sheamus, the supposed babyface in the scene. And one could argue that Sheamus was damaged goods as a main event guy from this point forward. The idea seemed to be following the Honky Tonk Man Ultimate Warrior template from a quarter century earlier. Pesky heel finally gets his comeuppance when a brutish challenger puts him away in a matter of seconds. You know the one. It worked in 1988 because fans truly loathed Honky and were positively exultant when the beloved Warrior stomped him flat. But what a miscalculation it was in 2012 to have a lukewarm Sheamus go over a cult favourite, heel or not, in Daniel Bryan, in a manner that caused many to scream "Burial!" with accusing fingers extended. And this opened WrestleMania. Talk about a tone setter. And at number 1, the King of the Road match. Remember what we said about beginning the event with something exciting that would make the fans want more? Some of what we've criticised here certainly delivered on thrills, be it WWE's namesake gimmick matches, or the Barbed Wire Massacre, or hell, even Abdullah the Butcher getting fried like flounder. The same could not be said for Dustin Rhodes' date with fate against the Blacktop Bully, leading off WCW's uncensored 1995 event in grandly tedious fashion. The two men fought in the back of a moving 18-wheeler filled with hay in a match that was taped sometime in advance of the pay-per-view. Because the action was outside, fans at the arena in Tupelo had to watch on big screens on the entranceway as Rhodes and Bully flung bales of hay at each other and struggled to maintain their balance on the shaky flatbed. The object was to sound off a horn positioned at the very top of the trailer, which Bully did after 13 minutes of action that didn't translate well to a viewing audience. And the kicker? Both men were fired for blading during the match, but presumably whoever thought of the match received no such punishment. Whoever said life isn't fair was absolutely right.